Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. We're back with another exciting episode of Off the Comma this week. And this week is really cool and exciting. Not only is it new and am I meeting some new folks and some new friends, but it's another one of our pairs episodes. And it's interesting because we've never been limited, even though the majority of this podcast has been about individuals telling their stories. It was never intended or expected that it would only be individuals. And it was last year that I interviewed the father and son team, Avery and Brian, and it turned out to be a really cool conversation. And we have another pair back. I'm going to let them talk about how they know each other, in what ways they're connected with each other. But this week's episode will be a little bit of a switch up from what we've been doing recently, in that we're going to be talking to a pair of folks, Anna Schmidt and Don Osborn, and they're going to be talking about what it's like to sit on a comma and get off the comma from different sides of the comma. So I'm really excited about this episode and hearing about their story and hearing about kind of the nuances and complexities of the story as it relates to different perspectives. And with that, I'm going to shut up because y'all know I can ramble on here. And I'm going to hand it over to Anna and Don and let y'all introduce yourselves. Anna, Don, welcome to Off the Comma. We're happy to have you here. And let's do intros. Before we get into your story later, tell us, how would you like to be known? And what would you like for us to know about you? Who'd like to start?
I'll start. Thank you so much, Paul, for having us. Just a brief overview. Donald and I are a brother-sister writing duo. So we are writing books together. To give a little background about myself personally, I love that question. How do you want to be known? I feel like it's such a core question because as humans, I think we all want to be known on a very deep level. I think I am somebody who sees a lot of nuance. I have strong opinions on what is right and wrong, but I can also really empathize and hear and understand where people are coming from. I think that helps me as a writer to be able to put myself into other people's positions and to be able to write from their perspective. I'm also would like to be known as the wife of my high school sweetheart, and I'm a homeschooling mom of 3, and I hope to be known as a writer.
Okay, nice. And I just want to jump in before we go to you, Don. It's interesting, being a writer is so much more than telling stories, right? It's what you have to be as a person to be able to capture those stories. So you have to be an observer, you have to be a little bit of an analyst, you have to be a feeler, right? So I think a lot of folks, I've interviewed a lot of people who are writing, people who have been writing, people who are just now working on their first book, and a lot of them talk about these experiences of what it takes to be a writer. So I so appreciate you sharing that. Don.
So now I wish I would have went first, because how do I follow that kind of stuff? I remember now I like to go first because I have to follow Annie. But the thing I like about that question is I can go way back. And when you get to be my age, the time moves so incredibly fast that there actually could be hundreds of answers to that question. Way back as a young boy, I probably wanted to be known as just somebody that people like. I get into my aviation career. I want to be known as the best pilot in the group. I get married. I have kids. I want to be known as the best dad on the block, the best dad. I want my kids to think I'm a great dad. And that just keeps going on till you get to be where I am now. And I kind of just want to be known as that character that's enjoying my life and enjoying it the completely top level and just enjoying every second, looking forward to waking up and seeing what the day brings.
I so appreciate, the description through the years too. Often we talk about kind of where we're sitting at right now, and you're in true writer fashion, right? You're allowing us to kind of see different chapters, right? What else?
Yeah.
I'll open it up briefly. What else would you like us to know about you beyond what you've already shared, and before we get into the thick of your story later?
I'm a retired airline pilot. And I still fly for a living, but I fly a private jet for a private individual. And I don't work that much anymore, which I like. He has the ability to keep me in warm climates just up the road from you most of the winter. So I enjoy that part of it. I have to admit, I like to get up in the morning. I spend an hour thinking about what I'm going to write or maybe writing it. I spend time in my hot tub, my massage chair. I exercise, go to the gym. I've really got an incredibly blessed life right now. And it's just, I'm thankful. And if I knew it was going to be this nice way back when, I probably would have worked a little harder. But everything fell into place.
Okay. Thank you, Don. Anna, how about you?
Yeah, I would say for me, something that's interesting about us is there's a 23-year age gap between Donald and I. And so he is the firstborn child of 5, and I am the lastborn. And so it's kind of fascinating how, though we have similar upbringings in some ways, a lot of the things that we went through as children are very, very different. We saw, Donald was there when our mom was a young mom, and like I was more there, as she was aging and getting older. So it's been interesting for Donald and I to really connect on a deeper level through our writing, as ways to get to know our mom and our family in unique ways. I guess something else that I would actually, I don't remember what I was going to say. So sorry about that.
Well, actually, can I jump in and reflect something?
Yeah.
You've got me thinking, and I'll jump in from time to time. I'll reflect or I'll comment, and wherever I reflect something inaccurately, please, by all means, correct me. You really bring to light the fact that many folks who there's a big age gap between when one sibling was born and the other. You're not just having different experiences growing up, but I mean, you can almost say you were raised by different parents, because like you said, in y'all's example, 23 years is a pretty significant gap. And what a person goes through in their life, we all know this from our own experiences, changes us dramatically. And it's no different if you're a parent, right? Who you were when you raised Don is very different than who you were when you raised Anna, even though you're still the same person, but the life experiences and your perspectives and everything change so dramatically. So that's really, that gives us something to chew on, doesn't it?
For sure. And so Donald is enjoying these years of like sitting in his hot tub and sitting in his massage chair. And I am still kind of in the throes of raising children. And, but like, because the way Donald and I have connected through writing, it's allowed me to not just be a mom and not just homeschool my kids, but I've really been able to learn about the creative side of myself and to reconnect with that part of myself.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know we're going to get to learn a lot more about both of you through your story. Well, and before we get into the story, one of the things I like to do with every episode is we start with intention. So as you think ahead to the next 45 minutes or so, the two of you in telling your stories with us, what would be your intentions for yourselves? What's your intention today in telling your story? Anna, why don't we start with you?
I would say authenticity. Like I would really like to come across as the person that I am. I'm kind of a what you see is what you get type of person. I'd love to be able to really explain and delve into how Donald and I were able to get off of a comma together, even though, like you said, our backgrounds were very different and we are coming off slightly different commas, but we did that in a united front.
Okay. Don, how about you?
I think about a story I read or heard once about when you win the lottery, all these relatives and friends you didn't know you have come out of the woodwork, and they all of a sudden they're there, and this project is, I've experienced that a little bit. A lot of friends, maybe people I haven't talked to in 20 years, are calling up, writing nice notes. We grew up in a very small little town, and we went back this summer together for a signing event. And I just felt, I told Annie, I said, I feel like everybody in this town knows me now and knows everything about me. And it's back when I lived there, I kind of felt like I knew everybody else. So that one thing that I'm really enjoying about this now is I do get to explain where I am today, what I'm doing today, and goals, aspirations. I think a lot of people my age think that their goals are done, or they've lived what they can live. And if there's anything I can tell people at my age, is it's just starting. Hang on.
Okay. So it sounds a little bit like, particularly in your case, Don, sort of the ability to inspire people like yourself at the similar stage in life, that there's still much more to go and much more to accomplish. And Anna, what I'm hearing in you is being able to kind of share your experience and what it's like for someone in your circumstances when it comes to getting off commas.
Absolutely.
My intention today is obviously to support you both in telling your story, create a container and a safe space for you to be able to do that. And that out there will be some ones who will hear your stories and they will see a little bit of themselves in you and your stories. And that will make them feel a little bit more connected, a little bit less alone, and in the best of cases, even more inspired or empowered to go out and do something that they've been secretly wanting to do. So awesome. Well, I haven't heard your story before, as is usually the case. So I'll be learning about you through your story. We always frame the episode with the same 5 questions. So let's jump in with the first one. The first question is, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma? Who would like to go first?
Go ahead, Annie.
I think it makes sense for Don. Don, I think you should go first.
Okay. All right.
This one.
I will do that. When I first heard about this podcast and the title, sitting on a comma, I envisioned thousands of commas in my life. From a young age, it's just comma, comma, comma. And I guess I treasured the little space in between those commas, because that's kind of when you were able to move. So from a very young age, the comma would have been finance. We grew up in somewhat of a poverty type situation, and the goals I'd set for myself all required money. And, I made that money from everything from mowing lawns to shoveling snow to working in a gas station. Eventually, I paid for a lot of my flying licenses working in a radio station, which I never would have saw that coming. So again, the first comma would have been young, inexperienced money. And the next comma would have been, hey, I see a clear goal in front of me now. And the hundreds of other commas were like jumping from this comma to this comma. Aviation was back in the 80s, a very difficult field to get into, and even much more staying in the field. It was incredibly competitive, very little room for any type of deviation from that set line that you were supposed to follow. And again, I just envisioned that whole line of commas when I saw the title sitting on a comma.
So definitely, like any number of commas that you could talk about, and it kind of takes you back to the beginning. It's like, where did the sentences start? Where did the commas first start dropping in? And what did each one kind of represent in terms of milestones?
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. Anna, how about you?
Yeah, so for me, I have always dreamed of being a writer. I would write lots and lots of stories as a child in my room and read them to anybody who would listen. And I actually studied journalism in college. I worked for our local newspaper for years. Loved that work. We moved out to North Carolina so my husband could go to law school, and I continued to do some writing and work out here. But then when we had children, I made the decision to stay home. And somewhere in there, just the busyness of life, my writing was kind of reduced to the occasional Facebook status and Christmas letter. And I felt like sad. I kept feeling like there was something missing, that I didn't have that writing, that creativity in my life. And that was a hard thing, but I just didn't feel like I had the words anymore. I just think I was so busy, so consumed, especially in making the decision to homeschool our children. I mean, that was a huge undertaking of choosing the curriculum and learning alongside my children and becoming their cheerleaders and supporting their creative endeavors. And I've loved every minute of that, and I'm so thankful for that. So I do feel like in some ways commas can be a beautiful thing. Um, this comma in my life was a chance to maybe gather the skills and the things that I needed in order to be a writer. And this all kind of shifted for us. Donald and I went through a really hard time with our family back in 2020. Actually, it started in 2019. Our sister was diagnosed with cancer, and she died 3 weeks later. 6 months after that, our mom passed away after a long illness. 3 weeks after that, our nephew was killed in a car accident. So we suddenly, while Donald and I were always fairly close, we would go months and months and months and not even talk. But as we were dealing with these really sad and horrible family hardships, we were talking every other day. We were texting all the time. We were going through this really hard thing together. And so, in a way, that those sad things rekindled our relationship. We, became very close as siblings. And then when Donald, I think as his career was coming to an end and he was starting to think about all of the commas in his airline career, and there was a lot of pain and things to sort through in his mind, because he went through really hard times of losing his job because of instability in the industry and things that were not his fault, and having to come to contact, having to put that into some sort of context for what does that mean for him. And so he approached me about writing his memoir. And at first I was like, do you remember those 3 kids I have and how I'm still homeschooling them? Like, why do you think I would have time for this? And so he's like, oh, maybe I'll find somebody else. And so I took the bait and I started working. I took his notes and I started writing the chapters, and I just got more and more invested in Donald's life and actually in the airline industry, which didn't really think I would have an interest in that before. And so for me, like, helping Donald possibly put into perspective his own comma, it got me off of my comma and was able to re-inspire me as a writer. And now I am writing for maybe an hour a day, and carving out that time, because I've realized how important it is to keep investing in myself, even though I love investing in my children and wouldn't want to stop doing that at any point. But it's also important to invest in myself and my own creative endeavors. And if it wasn't for Donald and him asking me to do that, I think I would still be stuck. I'm not sure that Donald would have processed some of the things that he went through fully without getting it into the words that is now his story.
That's a comma that she really brought up, that at a very young age, I considered myself a writer. And at a very young age, I was writing songs and stories, and there was 20 novels bounced around in my head. But I always stopped. That the comma for me was, I know I didn't possess the technical knowledge of where a capital letter is supposed to be, where a period or a comma is supposed to be. And I always knew that when I write, my sentences sentence number 1 needs to kind of lead into sentence number 2, paragraph, chapter. And I knew I didn't possess that kind of that talent, that part of writing talent. And I let it go for years and years. And one day I just said, well, I'm going to write this. And that's when I called Annie and said, hey, I know I need help with the technical end of this. And that's when it became. She decided it was a memoir. I originally started as kind of an expose on the airline industry, and she convinced me that isn't what people really care about. It's the old thing about when a person buys sausage in a grocery store, they really don't want to know how it's made or where it came from. Same way, a person getting on an airline, they probably really don't want to know what's going on underneath the terminal there, which in my mind down the road might be another book someday.
Yeah. Well, if I may, let me jump in. I kind of want to reflect back what you've shared so far, because I'm hearing a couple of different things and in no particular order. And please, by all means, correct me where I might be off base. But I'm hearing a couple of siblings who have both been born with the gift of storytelling and story carriers, if you will. Some of these words are just kind of coming to me as I'm talking. And that, your lives have unfolded in their own unique ways. You had this just really unbelievable period of tragedy in your life that kind of brought you back together under completely unforeseen and tragic circumstances. And since that time and in the reconnecting, you've kind of found that shared thing that you have between you, which is the storytelling, found an excuse to be able to partner with that talent, and identified kind of your unique ends of the spectrum there, from ideation on Don's end to, in retail or in corporate, I would have called it like implementation on your end, Anna, but that's too crass of a word. Like, it's almost like on your end, Anna, you're like the birth doula of it all, as well as creating your own stories. I'll stop there. That's what I'm hearing so far.
No, that's a really good analogy to put all together. I mean, I was hoping Andy copied some of that down, because we may want to use that in our next book. So
it will be recorded here. Okay, you can replay it however often you want. But tell me where I might have been off, or maybe where that was an oversimplification of your experiences together.
I mean, I think that's beautiful. Like, we often say that Donald tells the story and I write the words. And I think so. It is a synergy that we have together, and we also aren't afraid to argue and disagree. And sometimes I think something should go a certain way, and he thinks something should go a certain way. And fortunately, Don is a really smart guy, and he's learned that I'm usually right. So that's solved a lot of our problems right there.
Nice.
But yes, I think, we have unique talents, I think, and we're able to use those to create stories that people have really loved.
Even we've done some book signings together and everything, and the distinction between us is so obvious. Annie gets up there; she's very well prepared. She has excellent notes and very well thought of things to say. I come up there with a basic background in radio, where I was live, and back then they didn't prepare the scripts. It was mainly ad lib for that few seconds between the records, and so usually she goes first with this very well prepared thing, and now I come up and kind of ad lib and try to make them laugh, and usually they do, and then Annie has to kind of get the system going back down the line that we're there for. So it does work very well. When we seem to play off each other very well.
I'm hearing like objective versus experience. Like, I'll make sure we stay on task, and I'll make sure that we have a good time while doing it, right?
Well, there's a really funny quote, and it says that the firstborn in a family is most likely to become like a CEO or a president, and the lastborn child is more likely to become a comedian. But in our family, the roles were reversed.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, I can already see kind of the dynamic and the energy at play here. So let's dive in a little bit more. So the comma you're describing is, many commas, but also the experience. It sounds like the experience of coming together and creating this book, this memoir, right? Is that essentially kind of what we're talking about? I know there's going to be more to it.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, all of the commas that Donald faced of losing jobs and having to go home and tell his kids that, hey, daddy doesn't have a job anymore, or looking his wife in the eye and saying, I'm going to have to start a tree trimming business because I don't have an airplane to fly right now. And I think Donald had to deal with so much of that, and he did this incredible job, which we talk about in the book, about how each time he would lose his airline job, he didn't curl up into a ball and say, woe was me. He was out there like the next day trying to figure out, well, can I start a business? Can I trim trees for this guy? Can I harvest soybeans in the off, during harvest time? And he did all of those things. So I think it'd be great to hear a little bit more from Donald, like how he was able to keep going, because I feel like I might just curl up in a ball if like I had spent my whole life becoming a pilot and then time and time again that was taken away from me.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's segue into the second question. This is perfect. And then I'm going to hand it right over to you, Don. So the second question is, as you look back at this comma or these commas that you were sitting on, what did it create for you? So that was a perfect bridge into, I think, talking about this further. Take it away.
One of the things I think really helped me at a very young age, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to fly big airplanes across the ocean. As a young boy, even at that, I didn't know really what that meant, other than I knew there were big airplanes and I knew they could fly across the ocean. And so I think as a young child or a young kid, knowing what you want to do is a tremendous advantage, because when you do fall off or change course or things happen, there's always that thing in the back of your mind that says, I still want to do this. I still have this goal that I've set for myself. And of course, it takes many different forks in the road, because what I want to do isn't happening. I've done everything they tell me I need to do, and now they've changed the rules on me. Or I've done everything. I finally got where I want to be, and the economy switched to where this airline can't make money anymore. But knowing exactly what I wanted to do at a young age, and then moving on, it wasn't really within my nature to get depressed and mad. I'd want to throw things and kick things maybe, but it was always there that, okay, what is the next? I'm sitting on this comma, like you say, how do I get to this next one? And usually it was, you shut up and think of a way to first. I would always say, okay, I'm unemployed. I need to find a job. And once I get a job, it's remarkable when you offer somebody a job, all of a sudden you see their eyes brighten up, their whole demeanor changes. And I've been fortunate in my career to offer people jobs, but in my own personal aspect, okay, I need to go out and get a job, even if it's shoveling soybeans. I at least have a job now. I have what I need in my mind is dignity. I have a job now. My next goal is, how do I find another aviation flying job?
Well, I'm hearing kind of a theme emerge here too. Like, I'm a life coach, and I'm in all these mindfulness circles and communities, and I love it. By the way, I love it, and I believe that sometimes we throw out words that become kind of washed, if you will. So it's like, on the one hand, what I'm hearing you say, Don, is like you have purpose and intention, right? But let's take it down even lower. What I'm hearing you describe is like, despite all of the changes and shifts in your life, what helped you navigate those changes was you knew what you wanted in the grand scheme. You wanted to be a pilot, or rather, you wanted to fly planes in the grand scheme, right? And within any given moment, you had that. And now you also had a need, which is, I need to be working. I need to have my dignity. I need to be contributing. And that you could still pursue the overarching want while you were taking care of those immediate or short-term needs.
Right. If there's one thing I'm proud of, I guess today, as I look back, is it all worked out pretty well. It definitely didn't work the way I thought it would work or how I would have planned it. But I look back now, I had a very interesting life and a really fun life when I think about it. Sometimes during the time, it sure didn't seem fun. But
and not necessarily always easy, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't say that aviation was never really easy, but it all made sense, after another long 6-7 weeks of training and going through the hoops. They want you, you're back in that uniform, back in that terminal, walk into your airplane, and it's like kind of a big deep breath. All right, I made it back. And I never quit a job ever. I was never fired. Mine jobs always fell out from underneath me. And so sometimes I think it might have been easier if I'd been fired, because I could say, well, I won't do that again. Maybe that wasn't as funny as I thought it was.
Okay. Anna, I know we're kind of centering a little bit around Don's story and his experience in the airline industry. So with regards to the second question, what did sitting on that comma create for you? I'm going to give you quite a bit of license how you want to approach it. You could answer it in relation to Don's story, you working with Don, or your own. Where would you like to take us with that question?
Yeah, so as I was listening to Donald, I was thinking about my own comma. And, as an 18-year-old, I was sure that I would have published a book by the age of 20. You know how it is with high school ambition. And you're just like, oh, yes, of course I will have published a book by the time I'm 20 years old. And obviously that did not happen. And I'm actually really thankful it didn't. Just thinking about the quality of my writing and the life experience that I had as an 18-year-old as compared to what I have now after, many decades later. I will say.
I just want to acknowledge you, and I'm so glad you brought us back here, because I was thinking about that earlier and I didn't get a chance to reflect it. Is as you were kind of queuing up in your answer to the first question, you're really sharing with us now. It's like you kind of always had the writer in you, and so now we get to hear a little bit about the journey, about how it evolved beyond what you already shared, which was when it was interrupted, while you shifted gears, while you were taking care of your family, educating your children. And so continue. I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh, no, you're good. So yeah, thinking about, I think it'd be really easy for me to look at those years where I was solely focused on the children and solely focused on homeschooling, and feel really down on myself that I didn't pursue writing and I didn't make that a priority. I mean, I could have journaled for 20 minutes a day. I could have done this, or I could have been in this writing community. And it would be really easy to just feel negative and upset that those years were wasted, or however society might look upon those. But in the other aspect, I think that there is so much to timing and creativity. Just like Donald has said, like he could not have written this book as a 25-year-old because he hadn't had all of these experiences yet. I think in the same way, it was really important for me to give that time to my family that they needed, and to really invest in those relationships, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's great to have a published book. It's great to have accolades for your writing. I really enjoy that. I'm not going to lie. But at the end of the day, like, going back to the question, how would you like to be known? I mean, I want to be known as someone who also loves my family and who has that relationship with them, because that's what's going to be with me at the end.
I think when she talks about, the saying, best laid plans of men, you can have all the plans in the world and you can follow a script. But I think for me and a lot of people, especially nowadays, it's not a matter of chasing that goal. It's a matter of hanging on. You just hang on and when you land somewhere, you kind of got to look around and see, all right, here I am now. This isn't what I expected. I certainly didn't know this was going to happen, but if I could put it into words, it's hang on more than plan and hope and pray. It's just hang on.
So you're both, I kind of reflected that for Donald earlier, but you're both telling the story, right? Of having an overarching want, for Don, it was flying, and for you, Anna, it was writing, and then life happens, and then here's the needs, and now I have a family, I have a need, and yet that want is always there. So you've talked about timing, and then you've kind of talked a little bit about, how you kind of get through those different periods where it's just not going the way you planned or expected or wanted or hoped. I love this analogy of hanging on, Don, because I myself have said, like there's a time, if we were in trees, right? There's a time to climb, there's a time to let go, and then sometimes you just hang on and let the winds blow. Right. So it's kind of a common and shared human experience, it sounds like. So
I could add to that too. You made it fairly simple: climb, hang on, or let go. But in real life, maybe there's fog under the ground there, and you can't see how far above the ground you are. So maybe letting go, would not be the thing to do right now. You may be an inch from the ground. You may be, 30 feet from the ground. So that's, I mean, even you have these goals and ideas and plans, like you just said, but there's always that juggling. When you can learn to juggle black balls, and it's a piece of cake. Well, somebody throws a glass ball in there, and now you have to be real careful because you don't want to drop that glass ball. The rubber ball is going to bounce back up. But what you just described made me think of somebody can come in there and take that glass ball and paint it black. And that throws a whole new realm in there that even if you could handle it, you don't know how you're going to, or if it can be handled. So
yeah.
I love the tree analogy, though. As an arborist, I really love the tree analogy.
You also introduced the element of thinking, right? Like, yes, it was definitely a very simplistic analogy, but oh my gosh, where you took me with that, the thinking, and then the juggling of the balls, right? Like they're all black rubber balls. I'm good. Now somebody throws me a glass ball. Oh, now I'm cautious. Somebody throws me a glass ball painted black and that I think is rubber ball. Okay, that's an episode. That's an episode. Let's save that.
We'll book that one later.
I've tried to learn to juggle, and I've fallen out of trees. So I mean, you really encompassed my life there.
Juggling in trees with one hand while holding on with the other.
There you go.
Ooh,
that's it. That's
like
the picture.
Let me ask the third question, and by no means does that mean that your storytelling is finished. By all means, go back and forth as much as you need to. The third question is, what have you learned about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma or these commas, as the case may be? I'll just leave it open. Like, as you look at the story and stories that you're sharing with us, what would you say you've learned about yourself or are learning about yourself? Anna, why don't you start off?
Yeah, so I think interesting. I mean, I've learned a lot about myself, that I can carve out time. I can love my family well and serve them, but also make sure that I'm okay and make sure that my creative interests are met. I feel like something that stands out more to me, other than like, what did I learn about myself personally, is how much Donald and I learned about our mom together. So her story is it's lightly told throughout our book. Some of the struggles that she faced as a single mom raising Donald. And, I wasn't around for those years, obviously, but we were able to see her life play out in the pages of the book in a way that helped us to grieve her really well. We started this book after her passing, and obviously, so she never read it. But because, like I said, Donald knew her as a young mother and I knew her as an old mother, within the pages of this book, I think we got her complete picture. And that, my ability to really empathize, and see Donald's perspective of our mom, and like Donald just being able to see what I saw. We, came together as siblings and really honored her life and the major impacts that she had in both of our lives. And I think that was something that I learned about our family and just the resilience that she instilled in us as children. Because I think Donald and I both have a resilience. We both seek the next thing. Donald did not ruminate in the times that his career let him down, and I didn't ruminate too much in the years that I didn't spend writing. And yet, because we had that work ethic from our mother and because of the resilience that she put into us, we were able to push past the things that got into our way. We were able to get off the comma and continue to pursue things that I think she'd be really proud of us today.
Well, it sounds like through the review of your mother's life, you recognized, because you said resilience, it sounds like you recognized it not only in her, but then also how that has showed up in you in your life. Is there anything else besides the resilience that you would say that particular experience taught you or that you've learned?
One thing, people have read that book. It was from the book starts out in a very small town where everybody knew everybody, and when I read the book and when I think about it, I think me. There I am, and here I'm doing something. But a lot of people looked at that as a tribute to my mom. They knew her personally, or they knew her, and they looked at it as a tribute. Only one person didn't like the way she was portrayed, and everybody else actually looked at it as a tribute. And I didn't even realize that till the book was completely done and we started hearing reviews or hearing people talk about it. I didn't realize that, however she said it, it loosely puts my mom's life interweaved in between the book. And that's something that was a big surprise to me, because I didn't think we said that much about her, but a lot of people keyed on it.
Okay. What else would you say you learned about yourselves in this experience? Anna, I was the question was also directed at you, and in addition to resilience. And then Don, I want to hear a little bit more from you. What else would you say this has taught you?
I would just say perseverance. I mean, it takes to write a book. It is not just sitting down and writing the copy. There's also rewrites. You have to be able to accept harsh criticism. You have to be able to scrap something that you were really proud of and realize that it wasn't working for somebody else and rewrite it in a way that makes more sense. I think something that I also learned about myself was the example that I'm setting for my children in setting aside this time for myself and in writing and accomplishing goals. I think that actually sets just as wonderful of an example to the children as me being alongside and homeschooling them and serving them, because they hopefully will see that the pursuit of great things is worth the effort, that it is not easy. I don't go around the house pretending like every writing day is wonderful. There are days I feel really frustrated because you get stuck on little chapters or different things that get frustrating. But I hope that even as I model some of that frustration, they also see that I'm modeling the perseverance of I'm not going to quit just because a comma came up. I'm going to continue and push past all the way to the period, or hopefully to the exclamation point at the end.
Oh, okay. Now you're just flirting with me. But as only writers can appreciate, right? Is the punctuation. I love that. Don, what would you add? What else would you say you learned about yourself?
One thing I really did learn is throughout my life, and I know this is going to be hard for you and the listeners to believe, but throughout my life, I've been called arrogant a few times, and maybe not as funny as I think I am. And I know that's hard for you guys to believe, but after this book, after hearing the things, I look back, that arrogance, that sense of humor, maybe even the sense of humor doesn't quite go with social norms sometimes. That's not an all bad thing. It really helped me develop self-confidence throughout the years. And everybody likes to say narcissist nowadays. That's a real big buzzword that's in everybody's sentence. And I've looked it up a couple times, and there are a few things, a few traits in there that I can see myself. Well, of course, that's me. That's me. Yes, that's definitely me. And then I have to stop and think, man, that may have kept me alive to this point in my life. These are not all bad traits. So
I think it's also important to acknowledge that a narcissist wouldn't ever have considered even looking at it and looking at themselves in it.
Oh, so, good. I need to write the book. Yeah, Mark.
I'm not making you a hero. I'm just trying to keep you from being a villain.
Okay, good. I like that. But and then I like to play in garage bands, do open mics, and throughout this year, I've learned that I used to go do an open mic, and in that environment, nobody's judgmental. Everybody's there just to have a good time. And I used to want to have somebody come up and say, "Hey, nice song," or "Good job," and what I've learned over the last several months, even a couple of years, is I'm not up there to entertain everybody else. I've realized I'm up there for my own personal enjoyment. And if I can look around and see one person tapping their feet or one person listening and not on their phone, that's all you need for the night. It's hey, I'm here for me, and I like spending time with me.
I think it's important to acknowledge that. Yeah. I'm encountering that in a lot of conversations and spaces today. And I think I'm self-referencing at this point for a moment. I think it's important to kind of honor and acknowledge that, Don, because it's one thing to operate in a way that solely serves your needs and never acknowledge it and leave it up to others to interpret. You're saying, no, I'm clear. This is my purpose. This is my intention. And I'm not going to apologize for it. And I don't have malicious intentions behind it, but you're very clear. It's like entertaining others and making other people happy wasn't my expectation or my objective to begin with. And I think when we're clear about that and we can state that, we all have a social contract with each other to try to at least understand each other. And I mean, I understand you a whole lot more from that. It's like if I'm expecting to get a lot out of you, then that's on me because that isn't your intention to begin with. That was a gross oversimplification, but
a lot of people, I think, a lot of people I know that have gone through rough marriages or ended their marriage, it kind of comes down to, hey, I expected this person to make me happy. Mm-hmm. And that's just, I know that's never going to happen. You have to make yourself happy. You have to understand yourself before you can even begin to think that it's going to go any deeper or further than that. That's definitely a thing I've learned in the last. Mm-hmm. And probably the all-time big thing I've learned is, especially at my stage, life's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. There's nothing wrong with laughing, having fun, and, taking it easy one day. And, the sun had set and I think, boy, I didn't get half the stuff accomplished I wanted to today. And now when that happens, I think, boy, did I have a great day today.
So Dodd, I have to say, I'm hearing you and I'm feeling a little jealous. And I'm like, maybe I am on another comma.
You should.
Because I'm like, I do care about what people think. And I think I know I live in my head a lot, worried about, am I, even right now, am I saying the right thing? How is this going to be perceived? Will people like what I have written? And I probably visit the Amazon reviews more often than I should, because I'm seeking that validation.
I love the 5-star review.
But I wish I didn't need the validation. And maybe that'll be, Paul, I'll come visit you in a couple years and we'll have another conversation about how I no longer need validation from other people.
Well, I mean, here's an invitation too. I mean, obviously I do work as a coach too, but I wonder, this is just, let's do this here for a second. And you don't have to answer these questions here. Just if you can set aside the judgment about needing or wanting validation being good or bad or right or wrong, what is it about the reviews that serves you? What is it about the reviews that you seek, right? What is it about the wanting to get certain types of reactions from people that brings you something, and allow yourself to kind of explore that without judging it and see where that takes you?
That's a really great question, because if you look at our reviews, we have all 5 stars except one guy gave us a 4-star review. And to this day, in my mind, that was a mistake. He meant to get 5, but I've read his review several times thinking, why is this one guy, why did he do 4 stars? And but
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I really like reading those reviews too. It just, I guess it just makes me feel like a big man. I mean, wow,
Hmm.
somebody likes, I came up with something with a lot of help from a lot of people, but there's people out there that liked it, and they still like it. And we get comments all the time about what's your next project, and we've got a good one coming. So
Yeah, I'll say for me, I mean, I will say that we have been really fortunate to not have harsh reviews. So maybe that awakening might still be coming for me. Um, but I think for me, writing is such a solo project. I mean, even though Donald and I do this together, I mean, at the end of the day, I am sitting alone at my computer and I am trying to put things on paper. And I'm hoping that what is in my head is coming out accurately. And there's always that little bit of like, is this coming out the way that I wanted it to? And are the words beautiful to others? Like, I liked that sentence. Did anybody else like that sentence? Um, so I think for me, there's just like, oh, wow, somebody received this work that I did very much alone for most of the time. And it then becomes like a community, because everybody, once they've read it, they've given their feedback, and it almost like belongs to other people, because once you write the words
Hmm.
and someone else reads them, they're no longer really your own. So I love to see how other people take my words and they own them to fit the stories of their own life. And so I think like some of the review reading is vanity. Like I like to hear people say good things, but also it's like
Mm.
when they talk about how the book connected with them or how they saw something in themselves in Donald's story. Like we get so many people saying, I don't know anything about aviation, but I was in this story and like this spoke to me and I could understand these things, and being able to share Donald's story in a very universal way that connects with so many people who've never met Donald, who may or may not have ever flown in an airplane. I think that has been such a huge, like, exciting thing for me to be able to have been able to
Mm.
share in that. So I think part of it is the community, part of it's like a little pat on the back from external sources.
Yeah. Well, and here's what it looks like to me as an outsider. If I'm kind of bringing together the things that you all shared, and maybe this is a little bit of a possible reframe, but if Donald's responsibility is to tell the story and to make sure that the story comes out of the well, then Donald needs to be focused on the integrity of the story, or the completeness and the wholeness of the story, right? Or the purity of the story, maybe is a word. And so that comes with some benefits in terms of some autonomy and some freedom and some independence. And maybe for Don, some consequences are it not always going to have people like me. I'm not always going to be seen, in a populist kind of view. You, on the other hand, the person who has to write the story and to think about who is now going to be receiving it, who the handoff goes to, then it kind of seems like it is your responsibility to think about what other people are going to think. It is your responsibility to think about how will it be received? Is it as clear as it was originally intended? Is it telling the story in the spirit in which it was birthed, right? And so the benefit is that you get a lot of, ability to kind of massage and tinker and focus on accuracy and so forth. And the consequences for you are in the having to think about others, is that it also means that you get to worry about what others think.
That's true.
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know if this is a tangent or if it's right on exactly what we're talking about, but I'll find myself reading, the finished product, and I think to myself, boy, I am good. then of course you go back and think, well, of course I had a lot of help doing this. And a really great example of that is this. We kind of had a band. We had to kind of throw it together for the last minute for a wedding. And so it was different people that I wasn't really comfortable or didn't know how to play. They were very talented musicians, and we're doing a little solo that I normally do, and I'm playing it, and I'm thinking to myself, this practice has really paid off. I am really getting good. That's going through my mind. I realize that this new guy is a phenomenal lead guitar player, and he's just going. So it was just, I would hear just a little bit of what I was doing, mostly what he's hearing, but yet in your mind, you think, boy, I'm getting good. That's the feeling I get when I read the finished product, even though I know that a small part of it is me. Most of it is other people.
Well, and I think what y'all are showing us, though, here in such a very clear way is the roles that you play, particularly in this unique writing and storytelling relationship that you two have, right? Yeah, of course, you feel like I'm good, but like you said, who else helped it look that way, right? And so the way that you two play very unique roles kind of on different ends of the spectrum here, and then how you play off of each other and what that creates for each of you is really pretty powerful.
It would, for a very arrogant person, it would be easy to forget what you just said and just focus on myself. Yeah, boy, I can do this. I can see why people would think I can go out on my own. I can do this all by myself. I'm that good, but it's
it takes the team.
It's impossible for me to think I could do it on my own, even though somewhere deep down inside, I like to think that.
Let me ask the fourth question and keep us rolling. 2 more questions left. So the fourth question is, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma, or what is changing?
Yeah, I think being back in touch with who I was meant to be has been really powerful for me personally. As I said before, I was always a writer, and that comma was a good 2 decades of my life where I still loved books. I still read all the time, but I wasn't actively writing. And I began to doubt myself. I began to think maybe I am not a writer. But because of how Donald's and I's commas have come together, like I can take up that title again and say, my name is Anna. I am a writer. I am a storyteller. And that's a gift that God has given me. And if I'm not using it, then I'm wasting that gift. And I'm so glad that I have the time and the ability to use that gift now.
I love that. I've had other writers describe on here. I was always a writer. I just wasn't always writing.
Yeah. So I'm just, very grateful for Donald for many things, but mostly like the way that he has supported my writing and has encouraged me to continue writing even beyond the book that we wrote together. That's just been, it's been amazing to have a cheerleader like Donald.
So allowing yourself to, or finding yourself and allowing yourself to get back to your writing and allowing others to support you in the writing and allowing yourself to see yourself in a broader and bigger way as a writer. That's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely.
Nice. Don, what about you?
Well, first of all, I got to get that image out of my mind of me in a short skirt and pom-poms, but I can do that.
Anna, I see what you're working with here.
See, yeah, thank you. Thank you for validating
me. To answer your question seriously, I kind of feel what's changed for me is the commas kind of are in the back now. There can't be a whole lot more commas in my life. Besides, with the exception, maybe something incredible, catastrophic or all, but I feel like what's changed for me is the commas they're no longer there. They're way in the back, a distant memory. And I can't see another one that wouldn't let me just to hop over it without a second thought.
Do you think that's because you have had all the practice? Like you have overcome such great challenges that overcoming other ones is easier?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's like, well, what else is there? I'm going to do this today because it sounds fun and I want to. There's no pressure on me to make a mortgage payment anymore or to get that next rating or make it to work on time, Airlines, on time is a huge deal. 15 minutes early is considered late. You push back 1 second and you're real late, and just there's no part of that left in my life anymore. I'm always early still. I signed on to your podcast 20 minutes early, sat there and waited. So I still have that. But I just don't think there's much in front of me that can't be tossed behind me.
Well, and it brings up another image to me as well, which is, what you describe is, I don't really think there are many more commas. There's also the possibility, and not to change your story, but this visual of tall weeds versus short grass kind of comes to mind. Like people experience commas as tall weeds and it's easy to get lost in. And you're kind of walking over it like it's short grass. Other people might see your commas as tall weeds, but to you, it's just short grass.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Last question for both of you. What does getting off the comma look like for you?
Gosh, I'll take that because I feel like I just answered it almost. I guess now that you asked that question, I'm kind of off the comma. It would surprise me greatly to think that there's another comma that down the road, sort of like a major health issue, something I have no control over. I just don't see another comma that isn't going to be at the very a slight nuisance.
I just want to ask Donald if there's like wood in his house and that he should knock on it.
I was thinking that, but
I'm like knocking on a wooden table right now. Okay. For your benefit.
Okay, good.
I'm just going to say I'm not superstitious, but I'm going to knock. But I hear what you're saying.
Shutting up isn't one of my specialties.
Or maybe his commas are greased and he'll just kind of slide through them. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, you're prepared well for future commas. I think for me, getting off the comma is the continuation of creating and being able to keep writing and to not be afraid of putting things out there that other people might not like. I mean, like Donald said, like at some point you have to write the story that you want to write that is not about other people. So Donald and I we're writing another book about stories from Donald's life. And I don't know what this says about me, but I kind of love being in Donald's head and like telling stories from his perspective. And that's been really exciting. But I'm also writing a novel that is not from Donald's perspective, which is, Donald has definitely been instrumental and he's been a huge part of me writing the book. But for the most part, that's my story and my invention. And so I guess like that's going to be a new brave step forward, is to put a novel out that just has my name on it. And that's going to be a new adventure. But I'm still really excited to put out books that have Donald's name on it too, because he is such an enchanting storyteller. And like, even if you don't know him, complete strangers who read this book have just like said, oh, I want to have coffee with this guy. Like, I want to get together with him. He just seems like a fun guy to know. And I think you've probably sensed that just from this interview, that he's a lot of fun to get to know, and you get to know him through the book.
Well, and
thank you, young cheerleader.
Well, I'm also seeing with you, I have some friends who are musicians. I'm not real well versed in the musical world, but it's similar, it seems, to being in a band and having a solo career. Like the two of you are a little bit of a band. Y'all make great music together through your books. Yeah. Don has his own things. And Anna, I'm so glad you shared that, because I was going to ask, like, what about Anna's story? What about Anna's books? And you answered that for us. So this is awesome.
When she first said the word memoir, I thought, my gosh, I don't have enough to talk about me for that long. And I don't even know if I like me that well to talk about me for that long, which it turns out I did.
And now we know differently.
Yeah. What the big issue was, though, that I found was what to leave. It wasn't what we were going to write. It's what to leave out. We had a book, we had a book 5 feet thick, and we had to get it down to a normal size. So it was difficult to stop and think, well, this may not be as interesting. Let's leave it out. And so our next project that we're working on now is a lot of the stuff we left out of the book, may or may not have anything to do with aviation at all. We talk a lot about my love for dogs.
Awesome. So, I mean, there's so much more we could talk about. There was kind of a pause there because I was like, do I ask the question? And I'm like, no, I feel like that is a good point. We could keep going, obviously. And there's so much more that folks can learn about you through this book that you've been talking about. So let's kind of bring it to a close. Don, Anna, where could people find you? I'm going to put all the links in the show notes and people can just click there. But if folks want to check you out, they want to look at the book, buy the book, or connect with you on social media, maybe even reach out to you and have that cup of coffee and conversation, where can people find you?
Well, I'll let Annie answer all those questions, but I do like the way you end, always leave them wanting more.
Yeah, so people can absolutely find us. We're on Instagram and TikTok. We can find us at where_we_land_book. You can find our book at Amazon.com. It's available for free on Kindle Unlimited, or you can pick up the ebook or the paperback. We absolutely love hearing from readers, so feel free to DM us on either platform. Love to talk to people.
Nice. Awesome. And your story wouldn't be complete without this last section that I do in every episode, because obviously this podcast is about people telling stories, everyday people sharing their experiences of life, and then giving an opportunity for others to kind of pull what resonates for them. Your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you an opportunity to also do what matters to us here and to me, is give a voice to other people, right? So I call this section Acknowledgements, and it's an opportunity for you to look at your circle and your sphere of influence and give a voice to, boost, lift up other voices. And that can be organizations, causes, other creators, family members, people in your circle. So who would you like to acknowledge today? And I'll put all their information in the show notes.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to call out Poe Ballantine. He is an author from our town of Chadron, Nebraska, and he wrote a book called Love and Terror on the Howling Plains of Nowhere. It was actually made into a movie, hugely successful, but he was a connection of one of Donald's best friends, was friends with him, and he asked him to read our book. And he read it and he gave us wonderful feedback. And he actually wrote the blurb, the front cover blurb inside of our book. So it was just amazing that somebody who is as accomplished as Poe Ballantine would take the time to build us up. And another shout out would be to Jennifer Carr of Connected Conversations podcast. She also is an independent author and, took the time to talk to us about our book. And she has published several of her own independent books. And I have really looked to her as a mentor of how to market and how to do all the things, because it takes not just writing the book. There's a lot of PR that has to go into it. There are posts that you have to make. There are, interviews that you have to schedule and things like that. So huge shout out to her. And then finally, our friend Kerwin Donis, he is an aspiring writer. Actually, he's a college student, a real estate guy, and he read our book. He was the first person to kind of lay eyes on the raw copy, and he challenged us and pushed us. Like, I wasn't really sure what to expect. He was just like, yeah, I'll read it for you. But every single page had notes and things that challenged us, and things that I thought were fine. He wanted them to be great, and he just kept pushing until we had to rewrite the entire book, which I'm so glad that we did. So he took the good bones that we had and I think turned it into a really great story.
Awesome. Well, thank you for giving voice to these folks. We'll put their links in the show notes. Everybody can check them out, as well as Don and Anna. So thank you for sharing your story today, for being willing to come on and kind of walk around the comma together and share these different perspectives. And we look forward to connecting more with you and checking out your book and seeing where your journey takes you. Thank you again for being on the episode.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you very much. You made this a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Y'all have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma. And feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.